welcoming your host, Marissa, the host of Be with Marisa Lee.
Hello, this is Marissa, the host of Be with Marisa Lee, and this is my first episode of the podcast. And I'm sitting in one of my rooms, and I've set up a little ambiance light and a plant, and I'm sitting on the floor to be grounded and just remember the intention of why I'm making this podcast, which is to share experiences that I'm aware of in my life and talking about them and hoping that these episodes can bring some sort of comfort to help you realize your own awareness in your life. Because when I would watch YouTube videos growing up, and I felt like that was the only place that I could probably find people to reference to when going through things in my life. So I wanted to make some sort of content that's sharing experiences and also knowing that it's your own personal journey, and I just hope that my experience can help you, inspire you to start or continue realizing things about your own journey. So this week's episode is going to be about ways that I cope with anxiety, and this is all based on experience within a little over the past year of realizing that I experience anxiety on a daily basis and what it means to cope. And then I'll get to the 8 ways that I cope with anxiety. And I want to just remind you that these are the ways that I cope with anxiety, and anxiety is a shared experience that each person experiences on their own at different magnitudes, and figuring out how you want to cope with something is your journey and for you to explore and figure out for yourself. So I just want you to remember that as you're listening, and that this could be a starting point or a continuing point if you already know what helps you. And even if you already know, maybe writing them down in a notebook so that you can remember for yourself when you're experiencing those pockets of anxiety, whether it be for an hour or you get a glimpse of it because you're being overworked, or if it's with you for more than a whole day, which happens sometimes too. But just remembering that you could take care of yourself and know how to show love to yourself is super important when you may feel like you don't know where to go because the mind is spiraling. So I've been going to therapy for the past year, and to keep it short, going to therapy helped me recognize that this very strong feeling that I felt most of my life and made me question how I acted around people or the thoughts that were in my head and the reactions I'd have to those thoughts is from anxiety. And with having anxiety, I recognize that I have certain triggers in my life, and when those triggers are present, that I can choose to react, which is being aware of how it triggers me, or I can respond and grow from that experience, which is very hard, but I just wanted to share that. And that's the short story of how I came to terms with realizing, and I think I'll save that for a whole other episode when I talk about finding a therapist or just going to therapy, because it's good to exercise that part of your body, because the brain is a part of your body, like how we work out at the gym. I think therapy is kind of like working out for your mind. The definition of coping is knowing how to deal with something effectively. That's what the dictionary says. And I believe coping is how you take care of yourself when you know you're going through a hard time. And in order to figure out how to take care of yourself, that takes trial and error, because we know ourselves best, but we're still trying to figure out who we are and not being sidetracked by certain things that are told to us as we're growing up, or social media, or just values and stereotypes that society has put on one person. So I think that's why sometimes it's hard to figure out who we are as a person sometimes. Even though we know deep down, I think it's following that intuition of knowing who you are and then responding knowing who you are, and that takes time. I just wanted to continue by going through the 8 ways that I currently cope with anxiety. And the first thing is ASMR videos. And the type of ASMR videos I watch are the ones that have to do with Reiki and chakras and clearing your energy. And I watch those right before I fall asleep at night. And the key word is, yes, falling asleep, because falling asleep for me is a blessing when I just fall asleep and then wake up in the morning. I've had nights where I sleep at 4 for almost every day, and so falling asleep pretty much in the blink of an eye is something that I do not take for granted. So I don't fall asleep because of the anxiety that I have. I have a lot of thoughts that pretty much just don't stop. I'll be overanalyzing the day and my interactions with people, and it just kind of all keeps going in my head till I'm able to fall asleep. So watching ASMR videos help a lot, because it's very soothing, because I think the direct sound that you're hearing and just knowing that that sound is from whatever particular thing is happening is very helpful. And I found even listening to a crackling fire, because that's so organic, but it's obviously through the TV, but listening to something like that or camping videos are actually really soothing to me, when people build things in the forest and that's all you hear, just the building of a tent or a cabin and then starting the fire, and hearing the crackling of the fire is very soothing to me. And the second thing I wanted to talk about that helps me cope with anxiety is incorporating meditation into my daily routine. And I would have to say meditation has been one of the most life-changing practices that I've incorporated into my life. And I've been doing it on a daily basis for almost 1.5 years. I mean, from time to time, I'll be a little bit off and I'll miss a morning, but pretty much for the past 1.5 years, I've been doing it daily, and it is life-changing because you just learn how to sit with yourself in silence. And the past couple of days, I've just shifted into knowing that whenever I'm sitting in meditation, I'm sitting with all the love that surrounds me, and I'm never alone. And just like realizing that you're setting that time for yourself, whether it be 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It reminds me of how I can set up things in my own life for myself when I just sit with myself and focus and know my intention of what I'm trying to do or how I want to share love to people, and knowing the intent or origin of my love, which is just from your soul, and just realizing that that's all I'm trying to give out to people. And it feels very vulnerable to give love, but I realize that I love to connect with people, and that's also why I decided to start a podcast, because I love being able to hear other people's thoughts, whether that be reading an article or reading someone's post on Instagram where they've decided to share more than the average person. I think it's beautiful when words are written down, and it could create so much imagery in someone's head. But back to meditation, I do about 10 minutes a day, and I think the best time to utilize meditation is in the morning, because once you wake up, you're still pretty groggy, and I think that's something to be taken advantage of, because your mind is a little bit slow to start thinking about the rest of the day, and it's still like you're kind of entering into this earth. So I think it's a good time to take advantage of the stillness that naturally comes to you from waking up. And actually, meditation helps me wake up, because I've been trying to wake up earlier, and on the days that I do wake up earlier, I meditate, and once I finish the meditation, my eyes are wider and I feel at peace with everything that's going to happen in the day, and I know that whatever is meant to happen in that day will be with intent and meant to achieve the goals that I've set for myself. And you can find all the links to the apps that I suggest and the YouTube channels that I'm going to be mentioning, and you could find them all in the article that I wrote that's on Medium, and the link will be in the description. And if you want to see a visual of this podcast, which is me filming it on my laptop computer, because that's how I feel the most comfortable and can just freely talk, you can find it on my YouTube channel, which will also be linked in the show notes. And going to the third coping mechanism that I found for myself, which is journaling. So journaling is another thing that I've been doing pretty much my whole life, and I will go in and out of it for periods of time. Recently I realized I don't journal when I definitely have something big on my chest that I don't want to address, and I know that journaling will just open it up and actually help me figure it out pretty much in one journal session. But I do tend to avoid journaling when I have something super heavy on my chest that I don't want to address, because sometimes when you're human, you don't want to address things because you know it may open up other wounds. But I'd have to say that journaling is a safe place for you to be there for yourself, because I think the main key is being there for yourself during hard times. And that doesn't mean don't rely on other people who are there for you, but I think it just means know that you are there for yourself, because I know for a long time I didn't even think that way. So I think a journal is a good reminder that you're there for yourself, that you understand yourself the most, and you know how to talk yourself through something when something's on your mind. So that's why I think journaling is super helpful. And I find prompts from books that I read reflecting on quotes, and there's a really good Instagram called Self Practice that has weekly reflection questions that I always reference to and write into my journal. And I pretty much save quotes or questions for days when I don't know what to write. And it's just really nice because you kind of want to keep the flow of journaling to be as often as you can, even if you don't know what to write. Maybe just writing 3 things that you're grateful for, because after each journal entry I'll write 3 things that I'm grateful for just to put them down. And I've actually found that none of the 3 things I've ever written have ever been the same thing, which I think is extraordinary, because we could be so grateful for just this room and the fact that I'm able to have this cool ambiance light in the background and this mic that I'm using to talk to y'all. Those would be the 3 things that I am grateful for. Or it could be something that's quote unquote small, but just waking up and appreciating that I felt happy once I woke up, or that there's enough toothpaste in the toothpaste bottle, or there could pretty much just be anything. And I don't think you should be self-conscious about appreciating those little things. Like just taking a breath is something to be grateful for. And for my journal, I actually have 2 parts to it. So I'll have the part where I just write whatever I want, and then I have another part for questions. And I've actually gotten into shadow journaling, which is very, very digging deep. If you're ready to dig deep and you're kind of wondering what that next step is, I would research shadow journaling, but do it when you know you have space and time to give to yourself, because it's going to get very raw and deep for yourself. And just know that you can be there for yourself as you're shadow journaling. But for regular journaling, I just recommend being more aware, or just being aware of how you feel and writing those things down and not judging those things, because you need to feel your feels and you need to write it down to let it out in some way. That's how I let it out, and I write everything in my journal. You need to have one place where you could just freely write everything, because no one's going to read this journal besides you, and you don't even have to read back on what you've written before. But I think the fact that you're writing is so powerful, of letting whatever you need out into the universe. And that could be letting go of something or manifesting something. It could be on both spectrums, or just being present and writing what you're grateful for. And we're about halfway through the 8 coping mechanisms. And the next one is a YouTube channel that I want to recommend to you all, because I put on this YouTube channel whenever I'm studying, cooking, cleaning, doing schoolwork, making art. It just fits any situation super well, and is so nostalgic because this creator combines very old vintage vinyl, sounds like vinyl records, and mixes it with rain or natural soundscapes. And I think the title of all the videos are so cool, because I linked one in the article that I wrote for this podcast, which is oldies playing on a beach while you're taking a nap ocean waves with birds and seagulls. I think that's so cool and just reminds you to notice whatever you're doing at the moment, because whatever you're doing, whether you're washing the dishes, you can use that as an opportunity to know how your hands are washing the dishes, how you're holding the sponge, how you're putting the dishes under the water. You being able to be firsthand with your body and mind, I think, is the best way to channel out of thoughts that kind of take over your head all the time and just be one with yourself. And that's how I get out of anxious moments, is just checking in with the body and then check in with the mind. Because sometimes when you check in with the mind first, it might just need its space to do its thing. The next item is CBD oil, and I use this every night before sleeping. I'll do about half the pipette that comes in the bottle. And CBD oil has changed my life, and I didn't want to talk about it on the podcast till I was sure that I knew the response that I'd have to it, and the response I have is it has been super helpful. And when I take it at night, I notice the next day how I'm able to be there for myself. And when I say be there for myself, it's because I know my mind goes in circles and goes through all these paths and storylines, and that I can react to them. And then after reacting, there could be judgment, because a reaction can be very strong. And when I take CBD, I'm able to see all these emotions that come up for me, but giving them space to do what they need to do. Let your feelings go where they need to go, and give them space. And you don't need to judge them, number one. And secondly, you could just be there for yourself and let them be. Let yourself feel those negative feelings if you need to. And know that you're going to be there for yourself when they decide to stop controlling your life. Or don't let the thoughts control your life, because you aren't your thoughts. You're that beautiful person watching your thoughts, being there for yourself, giving yourself space. You're that beautiful person doing that for yourself. Your thoughts come from fear, and storylines happen from experiences that have triggered you and come up because you're just human. So you have to give yourself space to let yourself feel all your feelings. The next step is communicating how you feel, which is very hard, but communicating is also very nice with people that you feel safe with communicating with. And the next item on the list is reading. And going back to falling asleep at night, reading helps me fall asleep instantly. And I guess a lot of my coping mechanisms relate to having to fall asleep at night, because it's on the harder side for me to fall asleep because my mind is always racing. So when I read pretty much any type of book, I'm able to fall asleep. I'll tell myself I'll read 10 pages, and pretty much by the 5th page I'm ready to go to sleep, but then I'll kind of read till 10 so that I know if I'm for sure sleepy, and will just knock out once I put the book down. But in the show notes, I have a really good video this is the video that kickstarted me to read, because it shows you how many books you'll read if you just read 10 pages a day. And is going to tell you that's not a lot of books. So after I watched this video, I made a limit for myself where every time I sit down and read, I'll at least read 10 pages. That's how I started. And now I'm at, every time I sit down to read, I'll read at least 30 pages. So you can kind of lift that limit for yourself. And 30 pages is less than 30 minutes of reading. So I try not to judge it by time. I try to just give myself little goals to read more, because I've been reading way more within the past year and into this year than I have probably in any other time of my life. And I love that this energy to learn and to seek knowledge, it has kind of got lighted up inside of me to learn things. And I know I never want to get rid of that again. And sometimes I just think school, when we're learning things we aren't necessarily interested in, or if there isn't the opportunity to incorporate things that we could be interested in, that idea of wanting to learn can get stale and boring. And that's one of the nice things that I've learned as I turned 25 this past December, was that I want to continue always learning and being curious and asking people questions, because that's how I learn the best, is when I hear other people's experiences and people who share with me. They're not telling me how to live my life, and they're just sharing their experience. And I think there's just so much to be said when I hear someone's story or someone's way of thinking. I think it's just a way to expand your mind into knowing just what else there is out there in the world. And we have 2 more. And number 7 on the list is going on walks, because that's that mind-body connection that you really want to get when you're feeling anxious. Or for myself, it helps me a lot, because recently I've been studying a lot, and it could get overwhelming thinking about the projects that need to get done, and then also balancing my creative projects like this podcast. So I think cutting up the day into study sessions or recording sessions or physical activity has really helped me organize my mind and also kind of de-stress in little ways throughout the day. So if I'm really focused on school, I'll tell myself I'm going to take a walk in the afternoon and not take my phone, and just be really present with each step and noticing the nature that surrounds me. Or I'll set a time to walk to a new neighborhood, because I know usually that's going to take a little bit longer. And on the way back, walking from a new area, you just appreciate all the familiarity that surrounds you and that you call your home as you walk back from exploring a new place. So that's why I think it's nice to give that newness to yourself in a small way, other than waiting for some big vacation or road trip. You're kind of giving yourself that inspiration and excitement by maybe exploring a new neighborhood that's safe and you're sure you're safe. And the last one of the list is one of my favorites, because it's what I'm trying to exude through my podcast as well, is getting dressed. And I don't mean getting dressed in your fanciest clothes, unless that's what you want to do. but I'm saying getting dressed in the coziest thing that you could put together for yourself other than pajamas. So for me, that would be wearing this really big plaid shirt and my sports pants. These aren't my pajamas, but I know these make me feel super cozy, and I'm going to be productive to talk on the podcast and comfortable, but know that I'm wearing another outfit besides my pajamas, so it kind of boosts my energy a little bit to talk. I just love fashion, and being cozy and fashionable is possible, and being cozy has many different definitions, and that's why I want to start a series also on the podcast called The Cozy Seat, because I'm in my cozy seat wearing my plaid shirt and the pink light bulb in the back with my plant and with blankets surrounding me. The cozy could mean anything for anyone. If someone wants to wear a super cute top they just got from the thrift store and they're sitting at their desk and they're comfortable because that's where they like to work, then that's getting dressed for the day. Or if I just want to wear a huge sweatshirt, which is what I'm going to be doing in the next episode, that's me getting dressed for the day, because knowing what you like and surrounding yourself with those things you like with intention, I think is so beautiful, because everything you can look at surrounding you can make you smile or make you feel good and warm inside. And I just wanted to end with this book that I'm reading. It's called The 9 Dimensions, and I found it on a walk today with my friend. It was in a super cute neighborhood where people put books into this shelf that you could come and leave books at. So I found this book called The 9 Dimensions, Unveiling the Laws of Eternity, and I'll show it in the video. And I was thinking to do a book club or just read, because it'll inspire me to keep reading and write down quotes that I like, and I'll share at the end of the next podcast some quotes that I found and how I maybe think it relates to my life or just thoughts that I have. So there'll be a little bit of that running thread through the podcast episodes, and I'm super excited to have put together this content and sharing it with you. And please check out the Medium article that will be linked in the description, where you could read pretty much what this whole podcast is about if you prefer to read. And there'll be a YouTube video if you just want to see it visually and with the ambiance lighting and my monstera plant behind me. Or you can listen to the podcast, which will be on all streaming services. And you can follow me on Instagram at Marisa M. Lee. And I just wanted to say thank you for listening to this first episode. And I see this podcast being something that is a part of my life that I will be doing in the long run, for the long run. And I'm teaching myself to be patient with creating this content and being intentional about what I share, and reminding you that I'm sharing my experiences and that I want to bring awareness by sharing my experiences, because these experiences have given me awareness, and I hope that you can have your own awareness for your own self. And awareness is just key to sharing more love and being there for yourself and enjoying this life that you're meant to enjoy. And this is Marissa. Thank you for listening to Be with Marisa Lee.